Well, hello there. This is aspiring author J.A. Arnold. Call me Tony. And this series is called Between Lines, where I read the lines that I love from the books that I read. If this series inspires you to pick up that book, I hope you enjoy your reading journey. This book comes to us from Fredrik Backman called A Man Called Uva. Sometimes you just want to be left alone, to stew in solitude, to grumble at your neighbors, to die a peaceful death. Is that asking for so much? How the universe does its utmost to upend the solitary life remains a mystery. And unfortunately for Uva, he's not the one in the wrong. It's everyone else that doesn't give the right to harass him. From drivers to neighbors, and worst of all, a cat who can't seem to take a clue. They have nothing better to do than to pester poor Uva. Some retirement this is. Only his beautiful Sonia didn't go first. Uva knew very well that her friends couldn't understand why she married him. He couldn't really blame them. People said he was bitter. Maybe they were right. He'd never reflected much on it. People also called him antisocial. Uva assumed this meant he wasn't overly keen on people, and in this instant, he could totally agree with them. More often than not, people were out of their minds. Uva wasn't one to engage in small talk. He had never come to realize that, these days at least, this was a serious character flaw. Now one had to be able to blabber on about anything with any old sod who happened to stray within an arm's length of you purely because it was nice. Uva didn't know how to do it. Perhaps it was the way he'd been raised. Maybe men of his generation had never been sufficiently prepared for a world where everybody spoke about doing things even though it no longer seemed worth doing them. Nowadays, people stood outside their newly refurbished houses and boasted as if they built them with their own bare hands, even though they hadn't so much as lifted a screwdriver. And they weren't even trying to pretend that it was any other way. They boasted about it. Apparently, there was no longer any value in being able to lay your own floorboards or refurbish a room or with rising damp or change the winter tires. And if you could just go and buy everything, what was the value of it? What was the value of a man? Life was never meant to turn into this. And yet, outside of Sonia, is it any wonder that Uva's standoffish behavior has led to where he is now? Thankfully, behaviors can change and actions can take shape to veer a person off the course of isolation. And as a certain U-Haul would have it, that is exactly what happens to Uva. This has been Fredrik Backman's A Man Called Uva. A time comes for every man where he chooses what sort of man he wants to be. And if you don't know the story, you don't know the man. Happy reading.